No, 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 no. Oh my. Oh. Oh man. All right. You know those really cringe-worthy memories? Like those times when you did or said something and you just look back and you go, oh, how humiliating, how totally awkward, and just thinking of what happened, it makes your body just go through convulsions. You're just like, this is the worst. And all you wish is that you could turn back time and do it all over again, or maybe not do whatever it is you were doing at all. Anyways, I've been thinking about one of these moments that happened to me, and I thought I'd share it with you. Why not? Why not just, pull my pants down and reveal some horrible memory that I have of professional failure for your entertainment, and hopefully, you'll get something out of it. Maybe there's some good learning there. I know I certainly learned a lot from this experience. So, you know what? Let's just take a break here quickly because I need to do something about this crap. Hold on. Man, there is nothing like a fresh haircut. There's nothing like an amazing Portuguese style piri pulled chicken sandwich. And there's nothing like getting a fresh growler of East Coast Pale from Merritt Brewing in downtown Hamilton. I am in heaven. Anyways, back to my everlasting shame. Here's the story. So about 10 years ago, I had just joined the Screen Composers Guild of Canada, and through them I was doing their amazing mentorship program, the Apprentice Mentor Program, which pairs you with a veteran composer, and at that time you spend about 6 weeks with them under their guidance, and you were doing everything from the most menial tasks to, maybe if you got lucky, writing some music to picture, and just generally being a fly on the wall while they did their work, and you're just sort of learning by observing and sometimes learning by doing. So anyways, I went through this experience. It was, I gotta tell you, absolutely life-changing. I was paired with the perfect person, and I learned an absolute ton. I just had my brain kicked open, all the doors in my head kicked open. So after my mentorship was done, I got a call to sit in on a session. He needed a bass player for some work that he was doing on a television show. I'm a guitar player by trade, but I play bass pretty well. That said, I had some limitations. Even though I studied classical guitar, my sight reading, even to this day, is not great. Not only do I not sight read all that well, I'm not great in the bass clef. I can improvise like nobody's business. I can take direction and make up stuff on the spot, no problem. But if you want me to sit down and sort of sight read on the spot like the great session players can do, that's not my bag. I've never woodshedded that skill to the point where I can say I'm a professional. So I get to this session and I'm sitting with these guys, truly veterans of the recording scene, but these charts, a little last minute, little off the cuff. Printed them directly from Digital Performer. None of it was quantized. So it was just basically like a guide. And the funny thing is that most of the guys on the session didn't need that at all, because it was pretty straightforward music. But for the bass player, it was really key to know, because you're the grounding of it. You got the percussion guys who can just sort of riff. You got the main lead guys who just like take a solo here and there. As long as you know what key you're in, you're fine. And then it was me who absolutely had to be on the money, completely in the pocket. This stuff was so crazy. I mean, it was a 4/4 chart. The piece was in 3/4. So the timing was completely off, and of course you've got like 64th notes tied to 64th notes because it's an unquantized DP session that he just sort of spit out as a rough guide, and it was a total nightmare. I just froze up. Every time there was a reset, the engineer would come over the talkback and be like, "Okay, that was okay. Adrian, you sound a little lost there. You doing okay?" It was just brutal. And at one point the engineer was like, "Adrian, you want a few moments to work the chart out?" And I was like, yeah, give me a few moments. I flipped the bass over, I wrapped the chart down, I got my pencil, and I was like furiously trying to figure out, okay, this is the 1, that's the 4, okay, this is the beat 1 of, even though it falls on the 3rd beat of the 4/4 bar, that's beat 1, and as we went along, my confidence just started to flag. I literally felt like physically I wanted to run away. Like it was all I could do to just sit down and not literally run out the studio and run away and never talk to anyone again that was involved with that whole scenario. So one guy that was on the session is my good friend Ron Korb. We've known each other for about a decade now, and recently when I did my little interview with Ron, I also asked him if he remembered this session and what his thoughts were, and it was really interesting to get his take. Here's Ron giving his thoughts on how he thought that session went down.
It was almost something that I wouldn't really remember, except that you brought it up. Yeah, I just don't remember it being that bad. Maybe it seemed like that to you, but it just was like another session, really. And I guess what it shows you is that even though you might be feeling really out of your depth or whatever, to everybody else in the room, they might not feel that way at all.
So there you go. I mean, Ron's perspective is completely different from mine. There was a weird point at which my brain kind of just did this, I don't even know how to describe it. It just sort of decided that this was what was happening, and okay. And oddly, I just started reading pretty fluidly, even though the chart was screwed up and even though I wasn't comfortable in the bass clef or even sight reading music all that well. Like, I mean, it was even at the time I was like, this is kind of crazy what my brain has just done. It's just kind of shed all of that fear, and it shed all of that nervousness and all the kind of preconceptions. Oh, you can't do this. You're not good at this. Oh, this is something where you're weak. I just said, you know what, I can't be focused on that right now. I have to be able to get through this. I have to be able to do this gig in a halfway acceptable manner. Now, that's not to say that it was a big success in the end or that I did really well, but I did pull myself out of a hole, and I learned some really important things. First of all, it's absolutely amazing what you can do if you put yourself into a high pressure situation where you just have to perform. Put yourself on the edge of what you know and what you can do, and the edge of failure, because that's where you're going to learn so fast. But the caveat to that is you do want to do it in a kind of quasi-safe space. So as an example, another great failure of mine was, again, about 8 years ago or so, through an orchestral reading session, which is kind of like you get a chance to put your music up in front of an orchestra. And my piece was so not user-friendly that I basically ground the orchestra to a halt. And again, it was pretty embarrassing. It was pretty humiliating. In the master class subsequently, I learned a lot about the holes in my game and where I was weak and my blind spots and everything that I was doing wrong. I was just like, this is it. This is what you're screwing up. And I was like, great. Focus on that, get better, and just never want to have this happen again. That's a pretty powerful experience to get you to level up. The other thing that's kind of cool about this, and that speaks to sort of Ron's experience of the whole thing, is that when you're in these situations, your expectation of what's going on, or your perspective on it's going to be so much worse than what everyone else's is. So even if you think you've massively screwed up, you've completely screwed the pooch, you're an absolute failure, chances are that the people around you may not have perceived it in quite the same way. And what I see so many people doing to their own detriment is apologizing for something unnecessarily. They say, oh, they kind of preempt it. They're like, oh, I'm really sorry about this. This part is terrible. This part's kind of weak. This thing is not so great, and I'm sorry. And for me, I'd say 8 times out of 10, people haven't even noticed anything that's wrong. And all you're doing by pointing out the negatives or pointing out something that you think is flawed is directing their attention to something that they never were aware of before. I feel like I need a drink after all that. I hope my story of total embarrassment and failure is helpful to you guys. And I hope that you take to heart the kind of lessons that I've learned. I'm sure you've learned these lessons yourself. Your failure is not as necessarily as bad as you think it is, and that by putting yourself out there, by putting yourself on the edge of what you think is possible and just going for it in a safe situation, you're going to learn so much quicker and so much more and really have that learning stick than if you did it in any other way. So get out there, take some chances, and have a great time. All right, that's all for me this week. Hope you guys enjoyed it and got something out of it, and we'll see you in the next one.